the process of it unofficially was, I was a kid and sitting with cousins and family members and friends who were dying, and then even with those who were left behind, sort of like, left behind by the person who died or felt left behind. And so sitting with them and having those conversations, but it wasn't until like I was 12 then. And it wasn't until I was maybe 33 when I finally heard the term, when it was I was talking to a friend who, I'm telling her all these experiences that I had and how I sat with these people and the things I did and help make funeral arrangements and help put together vigils and those things. And she says, "Oh, you sounds like you're a death doula." And I thought, "Oh, never heard of that. Let me check that out." And went researching, looking into it, and found out, yeah, this sounds like exactly what I've been doing for the last many years. And from there, it was a lot of research, probably about 5 or 6 years of research and just looking into it and talking to others and talking to hospice nurses and other death doulas and folks who worked in the dying space. And then 2021 was when I was like, yeah, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is the position I have. I am a death doula now. So it was a long time between, the first time and then finally calling myself death doula, nearly 30 years. No one was surprised. I think it was more of a, oh, yep, that makes sense. It was one of those, just knowing me growing up and having been there, it was this bright moment for them, just like it was for me when my friend mentioned the term. For them, it was like, it was the same thing. Like, yeah, you know what? Yes, that is exactly what you are. But I get a lot of questions like, what is like helping people die? Is that like suicide? Or like I get that often. Or would I help someone in that situation? I get that. But mostly it's questions just about the process of dying. Like I think it helps. So many people have questions about dying and they don't know who to go to. Some are about the afterlife, and it's like I can't answer those for you, but a lot are about like, okay, well, if I want to die at home, how do I make that happen? How do I get as close to the death that I want as possible? It's funny because I never thought about it until the LA Times article came out, and a guy writes me, he says, you're the first male that I've seen doing the work. And then I had to think, and I'm like, I think I'm the only one I know as well. But I never thought about it. I don't know if it's played a role. It's never come up in conversation. It's never been a thing that's for anyone that I've worked with and anyone that I've talked to. And so I really can't speak to it, but I do know that like there are now, I know, after saying that and me looking, and I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of women doing the work. And I don't know why. I don't, because I know men who do this work without knowing that they're doing this work. You know what I mean? It's just men who've sat with, whoever it was, and who I've talked to, and they say, oh, I read this thing, and wow, this is what I did for my mom, and this is what I did for my brother. And it's like, yeah, you have what it takes then to do it. Maybe you should look into it. We'd love to have you. We'd love to bring more folks into the fold. I have a very close friend who lost his dad just a few days ago. And I couldn't physically be there, but was able to just call him on the phone. And a lot of the phone conversation was not talking. It was just, but I know that if he needed to say anything, he knew he could say it to me, in a space where there's no judgment. There's, and he just felt loved and supported. And I think that's really important. I was talking about being like present for them emotionally and spiritually. Emotionally, it's really just being able to hold space, like I think a lot of us do that when we're there for the people who are dying or the family that's left behind. It's being there and just being a support. Sometimes it's being there and being silent. I know you've lost someone. How did that feel? Okay. And then I'm able to bring those conversations back around to that person. And, one, being reminded, like there was that study that was done that, being reminded of our death, helps us to live a better life. Right. And so I'm able to bring those conversations around and help them finally talk about their own mortality, but also figure out what it is they want to do and should do before that time comes, while they have time, unlike the person who they're so willing to have a conversation about, who's gone or in the process of going. It's always me that bring, like, I love talking about it. And there's no topic that I can't bring back around. And so my friends all go crazy, like, how did we get here? And, and at that point, we're like 3 hours into the conversation and they realize that, oh, wow, we've been talking about death for a long time. And then it just becomes like, oh, it's always scared me, but that was pretty easy. And so I love doing that. I love pulling people into it every chance I get. It's always like what happens to everything when I go, like what happens to the world when I go, like whatever their world is, or also just not knowing what that unknown part, like that thing that happens after we go. And but also a large part of it is I didn't get to do all the things that I wanted to do. What, like, how much regret am I going to have when that time comes? And like it's a lot of fear around that, around, like, a lot of anxiety around the regrets. With a lot of the folks I talk to, it's like, I don't know if I've done enough, and what will they have to say about me? And it's like, yeah, well, that's not for you to worry about. It won't matter at that point. I read something a couple years ago about someone who wasn't dying, but they hired a death doula. It was like, huh, and they and saw the benefits of it. It was like, oh, and lived a better life, and had no diagnosis, no nothing. It was just, I think this would be a great person to talk to and to get my life together. And I thought, that's such a great idea. And which is funny because now, like, my friends who know that this is what I do, a lot of them contact me to ask questions, and it's really, I love it, and it's really helping them in a way that I'd never considered. Like, I always thought, for a while, it was like, okay, of course I work for people who are dying, but it's like, no, I work for whoever needs to talk, and or just wants to know more information, or whoever needs it. I think I was maybe 8 or 9 when my great aunt, my grandmother's sister, died. And I remember my mom and other family members telling stories about her, and when she was dying, how there were, she would say that her mom came to tell her that she was coming to pick her up soon, but her mom had died years before that. And I just remember thinking, well, how did she come? She's dead. But it was like such an acceptance. Like, I didn't really question it much. I quickly understood what that meant, and thought, wow, okay. And then, in hindsight, that was sort of me where I realized that I was comfortable with death. Throughout the years, I had friends who died, and sometimes, like, the last words on their from them, they were talking to someone who had passed before them. And then when my grandmother died, it was identical to her sister. It was, mom said she's coming back to get me once my room is ready. And, and that's when I knew. I was like, okay, well, that means we don't really have much time, that this is going to happen soon. And, and it was, and even there's so, there's so many cases, like talking to my friends and other family members, like everyone I know, everyone I've had those conversations with have very similar stories of their family members um, who were dying, and were mostly who were able to have, like, you know, the process, like have that process, not really sudden death, but even in sudden death situations, you know, like even when the whole George Floyd thing happened a couple of years ago, and I tried not to watch the video, and I still haven't seen the whole thing, but there was, he kept calling for his mom, and it was like, did he see her? Was she there? Because his mom died, years ago, and so it's like, did he see her there? And so, yeah, I think there are so many situations about it. I worked with a lot of folks um, who use plant medicine in the work, and so, like, psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca, and so there's situations, and there are instances when those spirits come back in those times. But I think it happens very often, and it's comforting. It's like, okay, well, who do I hope who do I want to come back and get me? Who do I hope someone's there, to take me wherever it is we're going. um so yeah, it happens all the time. Like, I think so many of us, we live like there's time, like there's a lot of time, and sometimes there is a lot of time. A lot of us will live to be old enough to do all the things we want to do, but a lot of us have proof that a lot of us won't.